Welcome to Tell Me More, the Allsteel podcast where design meets innovation and we explore the limitless potential of workspaces. In this exclusive series, we're peeling back the layers of workplace design. From the psychology of colors to the future of hybrid work, join us as we open doors to conversations with industry leaders, architects, and designers who redefine the modern workplace. This is Tell Me More, brought to you by Allsteel, because when it comes to designing the future, there's always more to discover.
Hello, welcome to the Tell Me More podcast. I'm Andrea Gauss, Director of Client Solutions at Allsteel, and I'm here with Brian, Jordan, and Rikki. Jordan, tell us a little bit about you.
Andrea, thank you. My name is Jordan Arnold. I'm a Senior Workplace Advisory Manager here at Allsteel and excited to be chatting with all of you fine folks. I'm going to shoot it over to Rikki Crowe.
Thanks, Jordan. Rikki Crowe, also a Senior Workplace Advisory Manager here at Allsteel. Excited to have the conversation today. Brian?
Hi, I'm Brian Kaule. I'm the Director of Product Design for H&I Workplace Furnishings, and I lead the internal team and the liaison to the external team.
Well, what are we talking about today, Andrea?
We're kicking off 2025. Glad to be here. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're thinking that we're going to be thinking that we're going to be talking about. That's the plan. Mm-hmm. So where are we going this year? What insights are we researching and digging into? What trends are we kind of seeing as we turn the page into 2025?
Love it.
We'll roll?
Yeah, let's do it.
Rikki,
yeah.
What are we talking about first? What's first on this?
I'm excited about Q1 just because, I love to nerd out on furniture planning. So really what we're planning on sharing is we started to look at how are people planning their space? How are they allocating space, et cetera? So we started to identify three major kind of planning methodologies that we're seeing our clients leverage. There's various reasons as to why one is going to be more representative of the goals and culture, et cetera, of each org. And so creating a structure where we can share that with our clients so they can think about it where do I fit? What makes the most sense for me? Or am I trying to make a shift towards a different type of kind of work process? So super excited about that and kind of all the content that we have to build out around it. But more importantly, I think is the conversations that we're able to have with individuals about kind of building off of that intentional office idea that we really were talking about last year, designing spaces with purpose, reflective of the unique things in an org, right? We're trying to make sure that spaces can be authentic for them so that, it all marries together. There's nothing worse than being inauthentic, I think, saying that we're something, but then really we're something else. I mean, I know we've had lots of conversations about that. So that's kind of the overall theme, I would say, for our Q1 content.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of that, that work and the way that you built it came out of learnings from clients that we've worked with and experiences that our design team has gone through in order to satisfy client need, which I think is really interesting, right? We're not pulling these ideas from outer space, with no context. There's this groundedness in what our clients are actually going through day to day. And what you're trying to do with this work is really just frame that out in a way that's a little bit more digestible, that allows individuals and organizations to maybe align with a specific way of thinking.
Totally.
Along the way to a little bit of exploration, we've done research around what are the space typologies that are trending? What are we seeing more of? Where are we seeing some big shifts on the floor plate in general? Where are there maybe a little bit more nuances that we're starting to see kind of appear over and over and turn into a trend? So we'll be discussing those as well and trying to do a little bit of predictive behavior. I think it's been fun for us to guess some of the trends that we're seeing in, for example, private offices are up significantly, and which is a little bit of a head scratcher, but then you can peel back the onion a little bit and say, okay, when you think about return to work, lots of times leaders were the first ones to physically come back to the office. They tend to be in private offices. The sectors that also tend to be a little bit more private office heavy, financial institutions, professional services, they also are investing as an industry sector more heavily or more quickly maybe than some other industries are recovering. And then obviously our new president just announcing mass return to work on the government side of FedGov side of the house. So I think we're going to continue to see the reflection and the nuance that might have on the floor plan. So we're excited to see what kind of continue to unfold on that front. But then this leaning into, okay, what practically from an intentional office activity do private office support? Really, that being maybe mentorship, focus work, etc., as people come in for kind of that specific intention. So that'd be a fun kind of thing to continue to watch this year, I think. Brian, anything from your perspective on whether it's reflecting on private office or any other kind of wholesale trends that you kind of watching?
I actually was just going to come on the uptick of private offices and sort of wondering if there's this correlation, what we talked about last year with Modern Leader, and how the space, how can we, I think, get ahead of that a little bit, and we have the sort of thoughts around what that space can become, how it can facilitate other experiences, and how that space then shapes Modern Leader as well. And so I think it's kind of interesting where maybe we were ahead of it a little bit with that discussion, and now as you're seeing the sort of statistically the uptick in private office, do we kind of marry those two things together?
Yeah.
And are there some other product feature benefits and different maybe verticals that kind of come out of that as well, which was pretty interesting.
I know last year we talked a little bit about this idea of private office versus in-office privacy, right? Like private office being that assigned private office space, and in-office privacy maybe being a little bit more flexible, maybe having multiple owners, and this idea that, privacy and these moments of kind of reflection, that's not exclusive to executive leadership, right? Like that's all of us, especially as we're coming back into a space that allows for less of that kind of personal feeling or that private feeling that we can get at home. So even exploring private office and what it means, I think is where we're at today as well.
Yeah.
So then I think that bleeds really nicely into what we want to explore in the second quarter. So lots of conversations with clients around culture, what builds culture, what does culture even mean? So let's uncover that a little bit. Big C, culture. I think as lots of companies are in this, we knew who we once were. We're in this sticky spot now, and we're trying to figure out who we want to be, maybe as we grow out of some kind of painful growing years here. Our hypothesis is that culture can be comprised of 3 core pillars. The first one being people. The people doing the thing, doing the interacting, your manager, your colleagues, your friends. We then live in and work within a place. So the physical structure, the work settings, the applications, the barriers, the open plan, whatever that looks like. And then the last one being policy, which is what maybe it's written policy. Sometimes it's those unwritten rules of how we're interacting, engaging with one another.
Well, I mean, I think there's something interesting in historically how culture was created. Like, I think it used to happen in a way that felt a little easier, right? Like, I think we leaned heavily on place to build the other two up. And so everyone, like, you assumed everyone would come in. That would be your opportunity to engage and connect with people. And so culture was just like, it just appeared, right? Like, it appeared a little bit more easily than it does today.
Jordan, I thought you were going to go back to like the beginning of human.
Back in time.
Like, wow, we're going. I didn't realize. So yeah, you're down in kind of pre-pandemic notion of place being a big representation of culture. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and I think the policy portion of it is something that I feel like I was starting to talk a lot more about over the last 2 years, because so many people are asking that, like, well, how do I get people back in? Why aren't they coming back in? It's like, you don't have the policy in place. And I mean, that's the thing, is like, you can't just put out a policy and not actually enforce it. That's another reason why a lot of like these return to offices aren't being successful. It's not because you don't have a beautiful workplace. You don't have a policy that you're enforcing, or your policy is so vague that everybody's interpreting in their own little special way. So I think really helping clients to, like, we're not here to tell people what their policies should be, because again, they should be reflective of what your mission is, what you believe as an org, but it's a conversation that they really need to be thinking about, and they really need to have a distinct personal POV on it. Otherwise, again, you can have amazing people that work for you and you can build a beautiful place. But if you don't have policies in place as to why you come into the office, how you meet, why you might stay home, etc., it's just not going to be as successful. And I think that that's where those conversations are going to get really interesting, is when we start to bring all those together.
And I think clients are afraid sometimes, right? Of putting it out there, of saying the thing that they want, of declaring like, this is what our belief is. These are the guidelines to work within. But I think what we find when that happens is that individuals are uncomfortable not knowing what the expectations are, right? They're not grounded in what the expectations are of their organization. And when we talk about this idea, I'll often refer to, I don't have any children of my own. I have some stepchildren who I love and adore. But what I know about kids is that they behave better within boundaries, right? In the same way that we can be more creative within boundaries, right? We're not thinking about everything that exists in the world. We're thinking about this much that exists in the world. And I think the same thing applies here.
Yeah, there's security and structure sometimes,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting too, that the culture conversation, coming at it from a consultancy perspective, when you think of like brand architecture, right? Cultures are very much, they're synonymous with brand, in the sense of, it is tapping into what people believe to be true about you, what you want people to believe about you, and then what are you going to do about it to facilitate those two things?
Right.
And so that's the people place policy, right? So it's like, we want to listen to people and what they want, right? The people themselves. And the policy is a reflection of what those beliefs are. And so to me, it's interesting. It's very much equivalent to just treating it like a brand in itself. And then that is, the stronger brands create those stronger cultures. And they become synonymous with, what people want.
I think too, reflecting back, we were talking about leadership, and I know I've said this before, but when you don't have a policy and you're not holding people accountable to that policy, you put mid-level managers just in a horrible spot.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to tell to the people that I'm leading. I don't know what I'm being held accountable to. And then, I've also seen companies where people are jumping from department to department based on the leader who has the most flexible policy, right? Which puts managers in a really tight spot there. So I think collectively, a culture that is consistent, is consistently better, is always better than the culture that is or the policy that is inconsistent. Okay.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Anything else we want to think about as we talk about culture? It's a big one. It feels like as ambiguous as innovation. Like people want great culture and people want to innovate, and it's like sculpting fog a little bit, but we're gonna attempt.
But culture should be something that is natural. It's not something that you can force on anything, right? Like, in no level of policy is going to make a culture if the people aren't buying into it, right? Like, it's all of those things are like intertwined and feed off of each other. So it's not like, oh, well, if I just get the right policy, everything's going to be perfect. It has to be aligned with authentically who you are as an org, like, it's the whole, I know, Jordan, we've talked about this. It's like when you start to create some of these policies of like, okay, just explaining to people what the expectation is from a meeting standpoint, like what should be a video call versus a text versus an IM, an email, etc. Like, I think that we have moved to the point, at least, maybe I'm, sharing a little bit too behind the curtain for us, but like we're very meeting heavy, very video meeting heavy in our organization. And I think we're starting to understand that while we love that connection virtually, we might need to start to set some guardrails on how often that should happen so that we can still dedicate time to being innovative or being thoughtful about other things, right? So I think being able to build out a structure to have conversations with our clients so that they can start to think about what those mean to them as well starts to give them a more like education and comfort level with the decisions that they're making. And that's a lot of like, I think the conversations that we tend to have with clients is like giving them enough information or asking the right questions so that they can develop the answer for themselves.
Right. Well, and like when we think about this, like people policy and or people policy place,
Mhm.
we only really have a level of impact directly on 2/3 or 1/3 of that, right? 2/3 of that is us providing hopefully some guidance and some advice to the organization for them to reflect on, but that like we only have a direct level of ownership over 1/3 of that conversation, which I think is going to be what's really interesting about as we move into this discussion around culture.
Mhm.
Yeah. One little more thing I want to talk about before we move on is technology. Like when you think about technology, it could fit into place, it could fit into policy. And absolutely, as individuals, we accept it at different rates. Big bad AI, virtual calls, all of those things, I think, is another piece that when left totally untethered by leadership does become ultra confusing. So as you're talking about policy around what is communication, a group of leaders here within our organization said, you know what, we're going to shorten our meetings down to 50 minutes versus 60 so that we give people an opportunity to just take care of some basic human needs, as well as give a moment of reflection. And guess what? We all said we were going to do that in November. And here we are a few months later, none of us have done it. Right. I think like leading by example, and then even helping things that feel scary, giving people on ramps onto them and open forums to discuss them, I think are super important. And technology is a big chunk of that. So interesting to see how that evolves too.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think giving the why behind it, really goes simple, but it goes a long way, because then people can see how they connect to it, right? And they can also see the bigger plan at play. Even if those decisions are hard in the beginning, at least you have clarity around how it ratchets up to a bigger idea, or what it's meant to imply or put into place to help the greater good. And if you can connect to that, I think adoption becomes a lot faster, and you maintain engagement that way too.
Yeah, there's a huge education standpoint that I think for years we didn't feel like we had to do with space that we do now, especially as how we provision within spaces has evolved, how meeting rooms work and that technology. Like, a lot of times people would be like, oh, I built this great space, but nobody's using it. It's like, but did you educate them on why you created that space? Like what the function is there to support, or like how to use the space? Like what autonomy do you have? Or just literally how do you connect to a TV? And I think that that's a huge portion of what we've been talking about too, with both like the planning methodologies as well as this people place policy, because there is a human factor to it. Like, what is my experience in the space, right? Like it's not just defined by the policy. You're also there's so much where I feel like, and I've said this before, like there's a psychology to a lot of the design that we do. It's not literally said, it's just kind of there. And so I think making sure people have an understanding of like, yes, there's a psychology to design, but there's also sometimes you literally just need to tell people and then they use it better or more, et cetera. So,
and live by example. Your leaders need to sit in the common space so that the broader organization knows that they can sit in the common space, right?
Or use the wellness room.
Yes, great example, Jordan.
Think about to your point, Rikki. I mean, there's a lot of great thinking and design and thought that goes into it. But if that's not communicated through policy, right, there might be a misappropriation of the space, and then someone later down the line goes, "Well, we don't have this thing, or we didn't have this." And it was, well, we didn't communicate. You actually do have it, but we weren't using it the right way. So it can have intentions in the negative as well, right? If by not doing it, you think like, oh, I don't want to have too heavy policy because I don't want to be restrictive. But if you don't have to a certain level, then people might misappropriate that space and then later say we don't have it, or we didn't have this thing, but we actually did.
Well, and that kind of connects back to that like unwritten rule kind of idea too. Is like, as much as we will try to design, whether it's a product or a space, with just kind of like a known intention, you see it, you understand it, it doesn't have to be explained. If you have a culture in which you do not feel like you have the autonomy to touch, move, interact with things, because there are, right? Like there are certain ones where everything is precious. You can't touch it. You can't do anything. Like they're going to interact with spaces the way they always have. They're going to interact with furniture the way they always have. And so helping people understand like, no, you're supposed to move it, or something as basic as like height adjustable tables. You don't have to stand. Just make sure it's set ergonomically correct, right? Like I think there's like a lot of things that we do. I think Lauren has always been a really good job of saying like, sometimes we have to press our clients to really think about who they actually are and be honest about who they are, because you might have a bigger uphill battle of getting buy-in or use from people if you do come from a culture where everything is precious and kind of locked down, and you're trying to move to one that's a little bit more, I'll say, progressive. Not that
Well, even on the alternative side, where maybe you feel equipped and enabled, but maybe too much without the policy boundaries. Like I've heard a lot of specifically lactation rooms that get utilized by people who are not lactating and are instead using it to nap or take a phone call, right? Like if the policy is not in place, if the rules haven't been applied, then that means that that room is not going to be able to be leveraged in the way that it was designed to be leveraged. It's not going to offer the comfort or the amenity that it should be offering because it's being utilized for the wrong purpose.
Yeah, totally.
I want to go back to a comment, Brian, you said about policy and just the workday in general. So if you want to go back to the beginning of time, okay, not the beginning of time, but in history,
lights up on the dawn of time.
That's right. In history, there were literally smoke breaks. Like people knew it was time for my smoke break, right? And then it evolved into coffee breaks. Like my dad tells stories about the corporation he worked for that the entire department would go to coffee break together. Yeah. And it was like at 10 in the morning and they'd all get up and they'd all move. And like that feels very like big suit kind of heavy. On the other hand, there was an interaction across kind of layers of the organization during that coffee break. And we don't have that now, right? Like we go and we get our coffee and we take it to our desk or we do the thing.
Well, and I used to joke about the common recycling and trash can being the new water cooler, right? Yeah. But it's the same thing. Like it's not as sexy as getting a cup of coffee, but you know, like we're all, you know, throughout the day making a step over there, maybe running into people that we're not seeing day to day, but we don't even have that today, right?
Yeah. So anyway, kind of missing those rhythms.
Yeah.
And especially technology further interrupts those rhythms, you know, and how do you kind of help to reestablish those, if that makes sense?
I think that's one of the biggest ones with the whole teams, like post-pandemic, the rhythm thing that you're talking about. You were talking about stopping the meeting 10 minutes short. I'm curious on when that pendulum will swing and how that will swing, because teams and these video chats and video team meetings, like it has completely disregarded those rhythms, right? Yeah. It's like its own rhythm. It's like bypassed human nature to like a rote technological calendar, you know, and it's interesting. Like, oh, sure, that's pure efficiency, but at what level then do we get back to, you know, you're talking about socialization, what we talked about last year, but like, when do we get back to that? Because I think there's a lot of great nuggets that we are foregoing for, like, you know, efficiency. And that's
and I think the reality is, like, I don't think that we're going back to where we were, right? Like if we go back to the world that we used to be living in, then Brian, you're probably not able to join us, right? Because Brian's based in Florida, right? Where he's not going to be local to where we are right now. And so like, we're not going back to that. And so this world that we're living in, it is enabled by that technology that feels like it's an over efficiency. But I think the reality is what we're going to need to do is figure out how do we blend those needs that we're missing out on, that former rhythm that we used to have, with the tools and the world that we live in now, right? Like Rikki and I, like we joke about this. We do a coffee talk with the four people on
Jordan,
the WPA team.
You into fourth quarter content. You cannot say there.
Sorry, Brian started it. Brian started it.
I'll help make you save it. The one thing I remember, we started talking about this idea of transitions. Yeah. Like last year. And I know a lot of it had to do with like your transition from home to work, et cetera. But brought something up when we were having a conversation as a team that I realized, because so many of my team's meetings are back to back to back, I don't have transition time between most of my calls. And while that's mostly fine most of the time, outside of needing, a bio break every once in a while, there have been times where I've gone from a call that was either highly stressful or like I got agitated, something like that, that I had to then immediately get off that call and bounce onto another and be like, oh, let's brainstorm and be in it, and it's very difficult to be like, okay, how do I quickly reset? Whereas historically, if I was in office, I would at least have probably had a transition time to another space to kind of like call it and move forward.
Can I share something? This is not about Q3 or Q4 content, Andrea. I read something the other day about how doorways create these opportunities for unique transition in our like mental state, where we are programmed to hold memory associated to space, which is why oftentimes when you go from one side of your house to the other, you forget what you were doing, because we kind of dump a certain amount of what we're holding on to as we move from space to space.
It makes me feel so much better.
I thought it was so fascinating. And the way they were talking about it was like using those as opportunities to reframe your thinking, right? Like when you walk through the door. What's that?
Pun intended.
Yes. Reframe. I didn't even do that on purpose. But this idea that like that, I was thinking about that relative to our transition conversation, right? And maybe that's a way we can pull that into even our home space, right? When we find, like when we move through those thresholds, taking the opportunity to say like, this is like, I am now reframing my thinking. I'm ready to be creative, right? I'm feeling that creative energy. I just thought it was fascinating. And so I've been trying it at home and so far successful.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. I really like that. Okay, we're going to move on to Q3. You're now permission. Oh, you still can't talk.
I can speak now?
No, man, that was Q4.
That was Q4.
Oh, sorry. It was both.
So we talked about how, building out this culture, and we're going to explore that much more through people, policy, and place. But we think we were having a little bit of a conversation. Is culture synonymous with community? So before we jump all the way in, I want to have a little bit of a debate on this. Which comes first? What builds what? Ready, set, go.
I think they're connected. Like my feeling is that they are connected, but culture is, to me, so driven and owned and impressed by the organization that it can't be wholly the same thing. Like community has to own a level of authenticity and autonomy and personal choice in like how I build that world around me. So I think culture informs community, but I don't think they're the same thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. No, I think community is like that click deeper. It's that deeper connection. Like you don't necessarily, culture does not imply connection. I mean, that's ultimately what we're trying to get to, right? Some level of connection, but you can have a culture that does not have a community. And I think that those are probably the organizations that aren't nearly as successful, right? Like when you see an authentic brand and an authentic culture, you probably are going to find a really tight community within that org. Like if we really like start to look at organizations within the world that were like, all of those things are 100% aligned. So do I think they're completely separate? No, but I think community is just that, like, that's kind of like the holy grail within culture is there's this really tight connective tissue. It is that community because you have set up, you again have amazing people in a great place. Like it's a whole other level, I think, than just talking about culture.
That would be a cool study to do actually. Like is culture the underlying foundational element to strong community? Like what goes into culture to produce like genuine community? I kind of think too, community is the personal agency of how I bring myself, and then how I connect with others. Culture can be mutually exclusive to that. Culture can be more about how we as a group, it's sort of like the collaboration versus innovation kind of discussion, right? Like, but to your point, I think what you said is interesting is like, if I feel really good about the culture, then I allow myself to be more genuine? Do I find then like-minded people? And then that's where community happens, I do think there's an interconnectivity to them, but I don't know if they're like, there's a direct correlation, but that would be really interesting if you take brands who believe they have really good culture and then you dived into the actual, are there community within there? Like, what's the correlation? And then how's that ratchet back up to, people policy in place?
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm jumping ahead, but Jordan, you had found a stat, I think. Was it like people that have one friend at work are likely to stay at an organization longer?
76%.
Yeah, 76%, which I'm just like flabbergasted. But then we found some additional stats that like there's like and I'm not going to quote the exact stat because I don't have it off the top of my head, but it was something around like 20 or 30% of people don't trust their coworkers. Whatever organization those people are in, I can guarantee you does not have a community. They
Right.
probably don't have a great culture either, right? And those are people that also don't have friends at work. So I think it's one of those things where it's like, we have these understandings about socialization. There's a direct connection between community and socialization, I think, as well as mentorship, right?
Yep.
Like those two things, you start to trust people, you're going to have a better connection. Like the idea of not trusting my coworkers is such a foreign idea to me that I don't know why you would ever stay with an organization if you didn't trust them. And it was also, I think I made that joke of last week where it was like when we had the whole like, oh, people that there are people that don't have work friends. I'm like, I obviously have a lot of work friends because I've been with the company for 20 years. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason why
I'm so popular.
I'm so popular. No, but you know what I mean? Like it's like, it was like when people would ask like, why have you been with the company so long? I always would lead with the whole, like, because of the people. Right.
Sure.
And it's one of those things that's like, it sounds corny, but it's 100% true. And I just think it's kind of interesting to start to look at socialization through that lens of like, how can you support that community of like, what does socialization mean for you and your organization? How can you create spaces that, really, and not policies, but like those unwritten rules that it's okay to socialize. Like we should want people to socialize. Cause I think that that's been when you're talking to some organizations, they have a little bit of a hesitancy of like, it seems like wasted time, but the reality is there is a direct connection between me and Jordan having a chat about my cat and my ability to then later be willing to be very vulnerable in a collaborative situation and say the wild thing, right? Like, because I trust her.
His name is Klaus, by the way.
Lady.
His name is Klaus.
His name is Klaus, and he's wonderful.
For everybody wondering.
So just to make the connection here, we are moving from intentional office into the subject of intentional community in third quarter. We're going to dive into, just like Rikki was saying, mentorship, socialization, and innovation. So this is really trying to connect those three kind of foundational elements back to this building of community, or maybe vice versa. Maybe you don't have innovation if you don't have community. I don't know. That's all kind of what we're looking to discover along the way. Jordan, you're
What's that?
What were we going to say? I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. I don't even remember what I was going to say. I was just going to comment on some of the things that Rikki mentioned. This idea that as we think about socialization, so like we're shifting into Q3 and having this conversation, so I think I can say it now. We're really anchoring on those ideas, and one of the things we talk about is this idea that there's like assumptive productivity when we do focus or collaboration work, right? If you see me typing on my laptop, or if you see me in the Zoom call, you assume I'm productive. Am I? I mean, who knows? But the reality is, even in those socialization moments, there is a level of productivity. Even like talking about Klaus is great, but also like we might, in that moment of socialization, express something to each other about work that we're doing that informs, the movement ahead. And I would even say, like, when I think about this idea of productivity, I think productivity is bolstered by a feeling of connection. Right? Like I use this example often where I would never do bad work on purpose. Like I am a perfectionist. I was straight A student. Like I would never intentionally do bad work. But will I do better, more efficient work for someone I care about who I know will do that for me? Absolutely. Right. Yep. So there's this level of increased productivity that comes out of that feeling of connectedness, that feeling of trust. And as we think about how, not that I think we have to sell community as it relates to clients that we're talking to today, I'm feeling a lot of interest and an understanding of the importance of it. But as we think about it, that kind of what is the ROI on that sense of community? I think there is a level of increased efficiency, increased productivity, and obviously increased overall engagement.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, I feel like I need some deep secret of yours. Rikki has a cat named Klaus. Jordan was a straight A student. What do you want to tell us? Is there anything I'm teasing?
What can you reveal to us? We won't tell anyone, Brian.
We won't tell anyone. Community.
That's a yet to be determined. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
TBD.
TBD.
I like it. I like it. All right. Well, we are going to round the corner here into Q4. So again, Q3, mentorship, socialization, innovation. Then when we think about intentional community, and as we were discussing a little bit ago, we forever will we have remote work. It will be a vital part of innovation, the global economy, international business, etc.
Yep.
And so thinking forward to how do we continue, or how do we maybe establish best practices around bringing those dispersed teams together? Like, how does community really get fostered in a dispersed team?
Yep.
What does bringing people together physically or virtually, like now that we'll have been 5 years in or whatever at that point in time, what really have we learned on a mass?
Yeah.
So then take it away.
Thanks. So we're a little far out from Q4 now. So this is being recorded on January 23rd. So we've got a little time for it to bake out. But there's a couple of things that I'm thinking about. As I think about this idea of building community, I feel like we as a global community have graduated from socializing and connecting in college to real world socialization and connection as we've gone through this major transition. So if you think about it, when you socialized in college, if you went to a physical college space, you had your floor of community. It was easy to find and grab people that you vibed with and connected with. Like that just happened naturally and organically in a similar way that we had it when we were in office, right? We became friends with the people that were across the aisle from us. Had cross-functional friends because we just happened to run into each other having coffee in the morning, right? And now we're moving into more of this real world space where we have to put a lot of intention. I don't know if you guys remember how hard it was to make friends after college, but there's no longer that like built-in pool of individuals that you have commonalities with. Suddenly you are like seeking out communities that you connect to, or going to places to find people that are similar to you. And I feel like we're now graduating, pun intended, into that space as we think about the work community, right? Like we have to put a sense of intention behind building that community if it's going to exist. And we talked about this, even last year, and talking about the intentional office, is that where historically we would have had these casual organic moments and we so desperately want those to continue to exist. The reality is, in many cases, they just can't. Right? We need to reframe how we're doing that in order to be able to have that. And so this is where
framing things again.
I'm framing things. I'm so into framing right now. I love a good frame. But I think this is where I can speak to our coffee talk and wrap up that conversation, because there's this piece of like, I'm starting to work through those ideas. And I think there's this organizational level of ownership on how do we help community build within our organization, but that there's also this individual level of responsibility to build my own community, right? And what I'm thinking about now, and kind of in some of the reading I've been doing, starting to separate out, like, what are the things that we can recreate from our time when we were in office together? And what are those things that require a whole level of new creation? Right. So an example would be the coffee talk that I do with Rikki and Lauren and Taylor. We just have a recurring meeting every Friday morning where we come together and sit and drink coffee and talk about things. Is this rocket science? Absolutely not. But it can't happen in an organic way anymore because we're not co-located with each other. So we set aside time to have that time to come together. And it's been, I would say, like transformative for us as it relates to how connected we feel and the community that we've built internally. Now, an example of like fresh creation might be happy hours, right? Or what fill in the blank of like socialization activity. Like, remember when we were doing virtual happy hours with our friends when we were during the pandemic? It's not the same, right? No. So it requires a new level of creation. And I don't know what that answer is yet, but just starting to play with those ideas and how do we put that intention in and still in some of those moments retain the kind of the core need or the core activity. And in some cases, how do we reformat it all together in order to achieve the thing we're trying to achieve, but in a holistically new way?
And then what is the cadence in which you physically just have to be together?
Yes. Yep. On the organizational side, thinking about like, I think the organization has a responsibility to help us find those people that we have commonality with, right? There's a level of ownership there, but also like, where does the organization offer opportunity to come together, both physically and virtually, for those connections to grow?
I know on my side, like as you mentioned earlier, I'm remote,
Yeah.
but when I come into our headquarters, at first I thought things would naturally, happen and things would just fall into place. But what I've realized over the last couple of years is that a lot of my trips, I have to be very intentional in terms of setting up those cultural moments and asking
Hmm.
my team to be there. Going back to the policy thing of like,
Yeah.
hey guys, I'm going to be in office. I'd like you to be there too, at least 2 or 3 of the days out of that week, so that we can, not force family fun, but like, like to really then set up like
Yeah.
opportunities to share and just, have those relationships where we can build those bonds where, prior, like you're saying, like those just, you didn't think about this because those just happened. Everyone was in the
Yeah.
office.
Well, I was thinking about you, Brian, and not in a weird way, while I was thinking about some of the content. And like the reality of you started this role fully virtually. And so it's easier to build those bonds as it relates to similar job functions, right? When we're on calls together, you get those moments of like little socialization. But like, how do you, when you are starting in an organization with like this massive virtual unknown people, do you find the people that you just vibe with? Right? Like that social element of socialization that's
Yeah.
not bound by job function. I feel like that's what's really hard for someone in
Yeah.
your role.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I know, here's what I know to be true. When I come in and I interact with my colleagues across different disciplines,
Hmm.
I'm full. I
Yeah.
fill my cup that way. And so, I just, and some of those things have been natural just for the projects I've been on or things that I've been leading and, enterprise initiatives I've been a part of. And, but it's a challenge. It's a
Hmm.
challenge. Like even I'm coming in next week and it's like I spent 2 weeks of really planning a calendar full so that I know that I meet with this person and I get with these people so that I can continue to build those bridges and maintain those bridges.
Okay, Rikki, I'm going to send last word over to you. Any last word before we wrap? Here?
No, I mean, I guess I don't know if I have a last word, like a singular word you're
Yeah,
looking
probably
for.
more than one word. No,
Yeah,
yeah.
Sentence or
I was gonna say it's me. I can't just use one word. No, but I will say that I am really excited to build off of a lot of the kind of thought leadership and POV that we were developing last year, mostly because like to Jordan's point, it's so much of it is being based off of conversations that we're having with our clients, what we're seeing, et cetera. So to continue to build on that and bring additional insights and like really great deep conversations with our clients, that's something I'm super excited about for this year.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us for the Tell Me More podcast. We're really looking forward to unpacking all of these great conversations over this season, and join us for our next one.
And that brings us to the end of another fascinating episode of Tell Me More. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of design and innovation. If you're hungry for more insights and stories, make sure to subscribe to Tell Me More on your preferred podcast platform. As we sign off, remember that the conversation doesn't end here. Connect with us on social media at Allsteel and share your thoughts, questions, or even your favorite moments from the podcast. We love hearing from our engaged and curious audience. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll continue exploring the Design to Do More philosophy. Until then, thanks for listening.